Hello, everyone. Welcome or welcome back to Dirty Martini. I hope you're doing well and I hope you're having an amazing day. I had a really long day. Well, to be honest, it has been a couple of weeks that all the days have been significantly long. But today in particular, it was my statistics exam. Then I had to work and now I have to study, but I don't feel like studying, so I thought I'll just chat with you. So, yeah, my statistics exam happened this morning. I barely slept tonight because I was up late studying, and then I woke up early to revise. So I slept like 4 hours, and that is I'm going mental. I am fully going mental. This exam I have been dreading since the university year started, and I honestly cannot objectively estimate how well I did or not. And the thing is, with every minute passing, I'm convinced I didn't do well at all. And I know that no amount of worrying, no amount of stressing out about it all will change the outcome, but as of now, I cannot seem to let myself patiently wait. I need to anxiously wait, apparently. And that's not because I want to be an academic weapon. It is simply because I don't want to be an academic victim of statistics anymore. Because the thing is, I spend a relatively, or let's say enough time studying, considering that on top of this, I still have lectures, I have other exams, I have work and whatnot. So I didn't necessarily have enough time to dedicate only to statistics, but I tried my best. Maybe at the expense of my first exam, which was a few days ago. So now you understand why I'm saying like it's been a couple of weeks like that this has been going on. So that first exam ended up being far more difficult than any mock exam they gave us. So I'm not even too hopeful about this one either. And what can I say? The pre-master is going great, guys. But the thing is, in my preparation for this, I made sure to memorize all the formulas, which were 38, by the way. So I made sure to memorize all the formulas I was supposed to know. And I did so, I would say, successfully. But the second the clock hit 9 a.m., I entered the exam and I was so anxious about whether or not I will forget the formulas that I did actually end up forgetting them. Which I was so mad about because my notebook with all the formulas was in my bag. It was literally touching my ankle and I could not check it out. And every single day for a week, I would write out all the formulas multiple times a day. When I was in the shower, even I would write, like I would trace them out with my finger on the wall. I would religiously repeat them the second I woke up and right before I got to bed. And I would know all of them and would be able to interpret all of them and would be able to explain everything. And the second that blank sheet was in front of me, I forgot what 1 plus 1 equals. I forgot absolutely everything. I am mesmerized by the fact that I even remembered my own name. And it was fun. See, the thing is, because I wanted to take that pressure off myself, the pressure of having to know everything off the top of my head, I decided that in the first 2 or 3 minutes of the exam, I would just write out the formulas on the sheet of paper that I was given and, stay calm throughout the exam and to just have them as reference points. So that's what I did. Like the first 2 minutes, I was writing down the formulas And so I started writing down first the ones I had the most trouble remembering, the more complex ones, the ones that are actually 3 rows. And I was so focused on not messing them up that I literally forgot all the easier ones, which are necessary for me to use to later get to use the longer, more complex ones. So I fully screwed myself over with that one. And what can I say? Literally, I don't even know. And so what I decided to do is just, start doing the exam, start thinking about the questions, and maybe they would come to me. Maybe the formulas as I was going would naturally, like my hand from all the repetition would naturally write them out. But those formulas never came. They were like, they packed up their bags and left as they've never been before, or whatever. Stick seasons. Is it even stick season? Okay, guys, I don't know why, but I actually don't think I have ever listened to a full song by Noah Kahan. I don't even know how you pronounce his name. And I know that if I were to listen to his music, I would love it, because apparently it is extremely emotional and extremely introspective. But I don't know why I'm not listening to it. Maybe I should really check it out. Maybe I'm missing out. And see, now I'm making a fool out of myself for not referencing it correctly. So I will rectify this mistake. I'll try not to forget to do that. Unlike I forgot the formulas. But yeah. So I have to admit, for a couple of questions, because I just didn't have the formulas, I randomly selected the answers. And as for the open-ended questions, I cannot begin to tell you how confused I am. I identify as confusion. Because the thing is, that level of anxiety that I started out with didn't go away. And to be honest, the rising levels of my not wanting to do this, I feel like over time I started questioning every single thing I wrote, and I started correcting actually correct answers. And I think I might have fully screwed myself over, and I might have doomed myself to fail the test, and I think I might have to redo it. And the thing is, I don't mind failing a test. That's whatever. I honestly would never let an exam or any type of assessment affect me on a level that is deeper than the superficial. I would not let it affect my confidence, my self-perception, and whatnot. And I would not let the potential of failing this one determine my self-worth or my perception of how much I know. Because I firmly believe that exams are not a proper representation of how much you know. Because there are so many other factors that go into how you perform at an exam. So, for instance, your performance is affected by your mental state. Are you anxious? Are you calm? What do you see at stake when it comes to this exam? What is the academic weight that has been put on this exam? Are you even physically okay? Are you on your period? Are you in pain? Did you sleep? Did you eat? Are you actually rested? So many factors influence it beyond how much you actually know about the subject. And let's be honest, there's always a significant level of chance. There's always a significant level of luck. So my point with this is to urge all the academic weapons out there, to urge all the anxious students out there, do not let an exam define you. It is not an objective estimation of your knowledge. It is purely momentary, bound to the state in which you were when you were taking the exam. And the only reason I felt anxious about this exam is because it was built up to me over time and from multiple sides. So my teachers kept on emphasizing that the passing of this course is a is a threshold you have to meet for the rest of the pre-master. And if we do not pass, we're not allowed to continue to study. So from an academic perspective, a lot depends momentarily on this exam and the way I perform. And this constant nagging created not the motivation they were maybe trying to establish, but rather it resulted in putting too much pressure on a single thing, as if your entire life and your entire existence are dependent on it. And they so were not, because the outcome of this exam does not determine the type of person I am. It does not determine my future. Sure, I may experience a study delay potentially, but is it really that serious? And I'm sorry, but I'm most definitely reluctant to give it the power to determine my entire life. It is just an exam, for God's sake. Again, it's not that serious. But because there was this constant outward pressure on me to perform well, I grew to actually be so resentful towards the entire subject and the knowledge it could provide me with. Which is such a pity, because statistics is genuinely so useful, and maybe if it was approached differently, I would have enjoyed my time doing it. But no, it was built up to me in such a way that it was basically the make it or break it moment of my life. And I hate the thought of giving a single thing so much influence and so much power. Especially when we're talking about academia. Because as much as I enjoy studying, and trust me, I love studying, I love learning new things, as much as I enjoy the academic field, it is most definitely not the thing which determines what I personally see as genuinely valid and important in life. Because I can have a degree and be a jerk, and being a jerk in my personal perception outweighs any bachelor's degree, any master's degree, any PhD, and everything else in between or above. Is there anything above PhD? I don't know. See, I'm not even familiar enough, because academia is not your life. Academia is not who you are. Your credentials are not who you are. Your job is not your life. Your job is not who you are. There are so many more important factors which outline the significance and the meaning of your existence. And trust me, a simple grade is not one of them. So in this process, the anxiety that arose in me when it came to this course, this exam, was simply the result of this instilled anxiety, this instilled pressure that this is the determinant of my life. And because it simply does not align with my personal worldviews, it felt uncomfortable, and I just grew resentful. And so when I say that I'm anxious about this exam, I mean that I simply don't want to fail, because I don't want to relive this entire pressure all over again. Once was more than enough, thank you. Not spectacular. Don't give me 14 of them right now. Don't give me a single one ever again in my life. The thought of having to go to a resit of an exam, the thought of failing academically, is not terrifying to me. What is really more exhausting, rather than terrifying, is the fact that I would potentially have to do a statistics exam again. because it would suggest having to go through this entire pressure. And in my personal humble opinion, a bit twisted mentality of a life or death situation that I simply do not preach. When, again, it is not that serious. And I just hate people putting too much pressure, too much unnecessary pressure on things that I wouldn't say that they don't matter, but they're not significant on the level that they try to portray them to be. Because the thing is, okay, I will not lie. Over time, when I started actually understanding the concepts, it wasn't that bad. Like, I saw fully the potential and the value of statistics. But like, can we please not examine me while promoting the concept that this examination is the moment which will determine my entire academic career, my entire life, and everything in between? Because, newsflash, it most definitely will not. And don't even bring up the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect, it is valid, but I refuse this exam to be my butterfly effect. Because whether or not I pass this exam does not determine my worth. And I will not let it determine my future. And I will not let you convince me otherwise. I swear, teachers are so important, not only as knowledge givers, not only as intellect nurturers, but also as someone who is supposed to be there to encourage you. And this threat-bound encouragement is not as effective as they hope it is. It is simply annoying and unnecessary. So if any teachers are out there listening to this, please keep in mind that the way to motivate a student to study is to make them fall in love with the subject, not make them fear it. And also, this is the first time in my entire university experience that I have not had enough time to answer all the questions from during an exam. It was a 2-hour exam, and for the last 5 minutes of it all, I was literally just randomly writing down things without giving it much thought, because I wanted to have an answer to every single question, because the worst thing is, they think I didn't study. And like, who cares what they think? And also, the worst thing, I don't get a point. The best thing, I randomly selected the correct one. Okay, you know what? Out of curiosity, I just now decided to check one of my answers, which was for quite a lot of points, because it was an open-ended question. It was about the interpretation of a table. And because I was like, no, I must have gotten it wrong, I actually have ended up fully correcting my correct answers into incorrect ones. And now, honestly, I feel a lot of annoyance with myself. Towards myself? Prepositions, English. Who cares? It's midnight. But like, also, no matter how annoyed I am, there is nothing I can already do. So I really need to just let it go. And I need to finally start trusting my gut and my intuition. And I need to stop questioning how much I know and if I know. Because every single time I have gone against my initial belief, against my initial decision, I have regretted it. And I'm not talking only about exams. I'm talking about every single decision I've made in my entire life. I just never listen to myself, because not only do I believe I'm wrong, but because I would like to believe that I'm wrong, because my gut feeling is more of a caution warning most of the times. But let's leave this to the side for now. The thing is, I don't know when the results are going to come out. And until they come out, I will be nervous. And I hate this because it's eating away the pleasure of learning. Examination for me is depriving me of the joy of exploration. The thing is, I don't care about failing this course. Like, would having a study delay suck? Absolutely. Especially considering that, you know what? I'm not going to finish this thought. The thing is, I just want to curl up in a ball and cry. And just cry until I have no tears left to cry, because the thought of having to do this all over again, of having to experience this all over again, and by this I mean statistics, and being threatened, well, not threatened like per se, but like, you know what I mean, like with this mentality that is so oppositional to what I personally believe in, and being like forced to align with this mentality, that is so sickening to me. And it is something that I'm dreading quite a lot, because I really did not enjoy this experience at all. It was so unnecessarily stressful and was putting more pressure on me than I would have liked. And that pressure was not nudging me to learn, it was threatening me to study. And that's just not how it works. And honestly, today I noticed that I haven't been this nervous for an exam since forever. And I spent a lot of energy on this. And I just really hope that it is enough, because this was all I could do. And if my 100% are not enough for a passing grade, which would suggest that this passing grade would suggest that I never have to do this again, which is the only thing I want right now. That is the only reason I care about this grade in particular. So if this is not enough, I would quite genuinely be annoyed, because I just need a rest and I need to distance myself from this. And at the same time, I'm kind of grateful that this is happening now in the beginning of the school year, because if it was, for instance, in the second semester, second block, so like the end of the academic year, when I will have already physically and mentally worn off, I don't even want to think how this pressure would have affected me. And I'm glad I am so attached to my principles and have such clarity on the way this particular thing I see, that I'm not letting it change me in a way, I'm not letting it change my principles, change my perceptions, and that I'm actually critically analyzing it and challenging it. This is probably the only thing I will take away from this course, that I am loyal to myself. And honestly, what a slay. Yeah, I would hate to go through this, because I see how it has affected me now. I see how it is affecting me now, while I'm still in the beginning of my ambition and the freshness of my desires for exploration. So had this happened at a later stage, it would have probably made me very unstable. So I'm happy it is happening now. I'm trying to learn from it, and hopefully I will just get it over with, which is the only thing I want. And to be honest with you, for my last exam, I'm kind of looking forward to studying for, because that was the only course I'm taking currently that I found extremely compelling, extremely interesting, and the only one that is directly related to what I'm studying. I mean, I'm not saying that statistics is not, because statistics is quite significant in whatever academic field you're in. Like, that is, well, I am in the Faculty of Business and Economics, so you can imagine the statistics kind of plays a big role there. But that particular course that I'm kind of looking forward to study for was the one course in which I studied actually useful, for the way I want to develop my self-concepts. And no, I'm not looking forward to the exam as an examination. I'm looking forward to the preparation because I quite genuinely really enjoyed that course. Ironically, that is the course in which I have the group project for which I talked to you about last week. And let me just give you a quick update. Our deadline is in 2 days, and we agreed all to have our parts done by Tuesday so that everything can be finalized, and then we just work on the presentation of it all. The deadline is in 2 days, and only I have put in my part, so it's not looking good. Like, come on, besties, be shame-driven at least, and write the 200 words that are required of you. It is not that difficult. But let's go back to the grades, because thinking about what I just talked to you about, it is making me think of something. What a sentence I just said. Wow. So many words and literally said nothing. So basically, let's circle back, because I actually think I have something to say. I want to further explore the relationship between grade and the feeling of worthiness. Is that even a word? The feeling of accomplishment. And before I continue, it is absolutely necessary that I point out the following. So I was very fortunate to grow up in a family where grades were not necessarily too important. I mean, my family always wanted me and my sister to be educated, but they did not see grades as an equivalent of knowledge per se, which is what I talked to you about earlier. I think this is just the way I was brought up, which is why I see the things the way I do. Growing up in my family, grades were just a number, and they weren't put on a pedestal as a reflection of our academic potential, of our academic effort, of our academic presence. I think a reason which contributed to this environment was the fact that my sister and I really don't mean to brag here or anything, but we never necessarily had too many troubles at school, and we were always performing well. So our parents quite genuinely didn't have to worry about this because they knew that we were very disciplined. Well, disciplined is not the correct word, because like you could be disciplined and put in the work and still struggle. We were just, we were performing well. And I think growing up in such a relaxed environment when it comes to school marks is why I don't put too much pressure on grades, even to this day. And I don't think I will put any pressure on grades because because they were not put on a pedestal in my family. They weren't a consideration even, to be honest. And I know that this is not the case in every single family. And I, again, feel extremely privileged and grateful and lucky to have grown up in such a mindset. And I know that not everybody gets this. Some of my friends don't even get it. And I know that if you grow up in an environment where, for example, you would get punished depending on the grade you got, or you would get stuff taken away from you, or you would get praised only when you got a higher mark, I can see how that can definitely exert influence on your self-esteem and self-perception. And I have seen this play out in the academic years of many of my friends. And I think if your family puts too much pressure on their child for grades, by the way, this is not me telling people how to raise their children. Like, your children are your own responsibility. Your children are your own problem. And if you are taking advice on how to raise a child from me, then reconsider having children, because I can barely raise myself. I literally don't know what I'm talking about. It is just observations I have made and the conclusions I have drawn from those observations and comparisons throughout the years. And also, I'm not saying that if your child is consistently failing in school that you should be dismissive of it. There's maybe something there, so pay attention. I'm talking about a completely different thing here, and I hope you understand where I'm coming from and what I'm trying to get to here. So I personally think that if your family puts too much pressure on you with regards to grades, it is inevitable that this will affect how you see yourself. Because you will get to see yourself as worthy and worth praising only when you're performing outstandingly. And you will get to see yourself as punishable and as a failure when you're below what's excellent, when you're quote unquote average. And I think that this can be a very detrimental mentality to have over the years, because it gets more and more ingrained into the way you see yourself, and it gets harder to unlearn. And I think it is a mentality which can create a lot of self-inflicted pain, which comes from the disproportionate relationship between having to be outstanding at all times and being a human. Because, surprise, surprise, humans make mistakes and humans fail. The thing is, none of us perform excellently all the time. To be honest, most of us, if not all of us, are average. And there's nothing wrong with being average. And I feel like it could potentially become extremely difficult to find value in averageness when you've only been taught that value is to be found in excellence. By the way, let me just say that with what I'm saying, I'm not saying don't put in effort. I'm not saying don't aim high. Absolutely not. I think you should always strive to be your best version, but learn to forgive yourself if that best version is not flawless. I feel, because it will inevitably be flawed, because you're human. You're not perfect. You're not unbound from conditions, from situations, from environments. You are likely to make a mistake because you are simply a human. And I feel like it is a difficult process. But once you realize that your self-worth and the meaning of your existence are not linear, are not directly attached to how you perform at the test, how you perform at work, at school, at whatever task, I feel like this is when you will set yourself free, and this is when you will start doing things simply because you enjoy them, not because you're trying to prove to someone, even if that someone is yourself, that you're worthy of a title, of credentials, that you're worthy of a praise, that you're worthy of a cum laude degree or whatever. So yes, I may not necessarily relate to those people who have grown up in that environment, but I was a direct first row observer of friends who did grow up in such an environment. And I whenever they would perform badly, they would cry, not only because their parents would say something, but also because they disappointed themselves by performing badly at the test. They would think of themselves as not good enough, as stupid, and this is such a dangerous way to see yourself. And what I noticed is that they would not necessarily take pride in their accomplishments. So they would put in more effort into perceiving the failure than celebrating the failure, quote unquote, because like, what is failure? Than celebrating the success and the fruit of their efforts. So when they got a lower grade, they would say, I'm stupid. But when they would get a high mark, they would just simply feel relief. And I touched upon this a few weeks ago, and I think this comes from being an overachiever, but having self-doubt. And I feel extremely privileged to not relate to this mentality academically. As for any other aspect of my life, well, I am an expert in this mentality. I can tell you all the ins and outs about it, and I can definitely tell you how it feels. But not when it comes to school, which I think is so extremely interesting. And I'm just grateful that this, because let's be real, this is the result of my parents doing, because they did not equate my worth as a human being to a grade, and teaching me that they just taught me that it is a momentary reflection, and it is not a set in stone evaluation of who you are and who you can be. So I really empathize with those people who were growing up with a differently mindset parents. What even was that sentence? Oh my God. So I empathize with them, even though I cannot necessarily relate with them, is what I'm trying to say. And now I'm just thinking, how does one overcome this mentality? Because this is a detrimental mentality to have, because as I previously mentioned, we're not always going to excel. Most of the time, and I'm sorry to break it to you, but okay, let's not say most of the time, let's not manifest it, but a lot of the times and a lot of trials and whatever you do in life, you're going to fail. And you are not going to succeed from the first try. Now, does this mean that you're not cut out for this thing that you so really passionately want? Absolutely not. Does it mean that you failing the first time, or like you failing an X amount of times, so does it imply that you should give up? Literally no. Don't ever let that thought cross your mind. I feel like once we detach our value from our performance is when we will start performing well, because we will actually put in passion into that thing, into that project, into that whatever, instead of actually putting in the determination to use this as a qualification of who you are, as a certification to prove why you're worthy, why you're good, why you're enough. And a lot of academic weapons suffer from this, suffer from the need of academic validation, whether for family reasons or like just other things that fuel this. So those academic weapons, so to call them, they find it very difficult to detach their value as a person from their academic accomplishments. And I can see why that is, when considering that throughout your entire conscious existence, you have been a student and you have been praised for how smart you are, how great and how great you're performing, and how good your grades are, and how well you are as a student. So I can imagine that this mentality is a poisonous one. And this is my advice for such people. What I would advise you to do is fail. What I would advise myself to do is fail. Fail as much as you have to, and do so unapologetically. Because failure should not be the thing you fear. Failure should be the thing you welcome, because from failure, you learn. You know what? Just think about it for a second. Pause this episode if you need to and think about it and compare. What did you learn from your last failure compared to your last achievement? And were they independent from each other? Like, did failure lead to accomplishment? In your next steps in life, which one are you bringing more lessons from? Which one has taught you how to approach situations, people, to approach yourself and life in general? Which one? Accomplishment, so achievement, or failure left a deeper mark as a perception shifter. So my point is, don't be scared to try and not excel. Don't be scared to try and not succeed. Be scared of not even trying. Don't let that fear of failure stop you from putting in the effort, from living, from putting in the passion, from putting in the desire, the love, and your soul into the things you do. Failure is inevitable, but failure doesn't need to be the full stop of your sentence. Failure is not a destination. It is a redirection. It is the airport you depart from and that you arrive to get to your next point. Failure is what will lead you to greatness because failure is extremely multi-layered. Failure is an extremely emotional experience because it makes you question. It makes you question your desires. It makes you question your intentions, makes you question yourself. And yes, that questioning can, of course, be detrimental. But I think that if we switch the perspective of that questioning and we use that questioning to utilize it, we can reach success. You can utilize your failure to succeed because through this reevaluation, if you see that this is genuinely the thing you want to do, that you want to achieve, you will set yourself free from the concept of excellence and perfection. And you will do that particular thing for the sake of you. And what a better driver, what a better motive to do something than to do it for your own self. And the thing is, no matter how many times you try, no matter how much effort and emotion you put into things, sometimes success is not guaranteed. And that is the harsh reality. But again, that doesn't mean that failure is your end point, because failure is a growing technique. It facilitates evolution rather than stagnancy. So we just need to accept that failure is a part of reality. And sometimes, no matter how much you try, no matter how hard you try, no matter how many attempts, how many sleepless nights, no matter how much time, sometimes you just fail. And that is okay. Just because you failing doesn't mean that you're a failure. Just because your worth was not evaluated on a scale from 1 to 10 doesn't mean that you're not worthy. I feel like we fear failure, and we fear it not only because of societal pressure and the potential embarrassment that will come from failing, but we also fear it because of pressure within ourselves. And I feel like those two types of pressure, the societal and the one coming from within ourselves, are very much interlinked. So in that case, even more, I would advise people not only to fail, but to embrace failure, because we are scared to fail not only because of societal and inner pressure, we're scared to fail because it is foreign. It is out of our comfort zone. And the way you eradicate this fear of failure is by failing. Because you get to see that failing is not the end of the world. It is, again, just a redirection. It is not the end of your path. I promise you. And sometimes it leads to even more beautiful things and things we initially didn't know that we wanted, things that we initially didn't know that we needed. So don't be scared to fail. Readapt and learn to be adaptive. Learn to fail, and I promise you that once you do, you will succeed. Because once you learn how to fail, once you learn how to fall, then you just know that the fall is a temporary setback. And it's just an opportunity for you to stop, reevaluate, and restart. And I don't mean failing only in academia. I mean failure in life. I don't think that failing makes you a loser. I don't think you lose anything because you gain a lot of experience and perspectives. Once you eradicate the concept of loss when it comes to failing, then I think you have cracked the code. Because you realize that failure is not you being deprived from success. Failure is there to give you a deeper perception, to give you another layer. So what I'm trying to get to is make failure a useful tool. Don't let failure stop you. Use it as a trampoline. Once you perceive failures as lessons instead of punishments, that is when you will begin the path of eradicating the mentality of equating your value as a person with your performance. Because as cheesy as it sounds, you are a human being and not a human doing. And you are worthy simply because you are, not because of the things you do. I don't know. I feel like I said so many words and I still actually said nothing. I feel like one of those scammer life coaches that is just trying to take your money by saying the same 7 Facebook 2011 quotes which were written above the image of a lion wearing a crown. So I'll just shut up. So thank you for listening to this episode, guys. Stay hydrated, wear sunscreen, and don't support genocide. Bye!